And so we've seen a lot of different options as to how people see things, but David is very direct. The fool says there is no God. And this idea seems to be that there is no one to hold me accountable. And so he presents humanity as sort of together, turning aside. And Paul actually quotes from this in Romans to prove his point that ultimately, as we all stand before God the judge, none of us is going to be able to say, oh yeah, I basically did what was right. We all sin. But a good one to think about as we wrap up our thinking about this book, The Universe Next Door by James Sire, about different worldviews, different ways of seeing things. We've seen a lot of different ways to see the world. Theism, belief in God, which is what we believe. Deism, God stripped of his personality. Naturalism, it just all works without God. Nihilism, which is kind of the logical result of that. Well, there's no meaning to anything. Existentialism, which comes in and tries to rescue that and says, well, I can make my own meaning. And we saw some Eastern ways of looking at things where everything is kind of all one and you're part of that, and that's kind of the point of reality. We saw postmodernism, which is very prevalent today. Your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, is sort of the extreme expression of postmodernism, though I think not what a lot of serious thinkers really think. But we've seen a lot of things. Last week we looked at Islam as well, a different way of thinking of God in a way much different than the way we do. But I want to just kind of recap today, thinking about why these things are important, and ultimately I want to kind of go back to the humility we should have when we think about the way we see things. And I think without humility, we really can't have a witness in the world. If we're just arrogant about what we believe, no one wants to listen to us. We have to have humility, but at the same time, we also have to have confidence, right? And I think we can have both of those things because on the one hand, as Sire says, and I agree with, no two people have the exact same worldview. So you might say, well, my church all has the same worldview, or my family all has the same worldview. But my sister put it well when we were visiting. She said, as my kids grow up, if they say, well, my parents went to church, my parents believe this, she said, you can't have my faith. You've got to get your own. Like, ultimately, we all will have our own way of seeing things. It won't be exactly the same as everyone else's, even if it does overlap on the most important things. So we should have humility when we think of our faith, something as important as what we believe about everything. But I also want to instill, as I said, a confidence that when we think of the way we see things and the world today, which seemingly has endless options, always adding more to what's right, what we can know, all these things. Really, when we think about it, there's only so many answers that we can actually give to the basic core questions of how we see reality. And so humility and confidence is what I want us to walk away from this study with. But like I said, it comes back to these core ideas. There's only so many